comes with the words, I love you. Now, a lot of people say, well, I can't say that, and I don't say that, and I don't like for people to say it to me because you're only supposed to say that to people who are really close to you. You're only supposed to say that to people that you're deeply romantically in love with. I'll hogwash. Jesus said it to us from the cross with His arms outstretched. He said it with blood and tears streaming from His body. I love you. I love you. There's power in those words. There's a young man also in Rockford, Illinois, who is a young country songwriter. Young man that I've come to know and love very well. His name is Luke Pitney. And Luke lost his father when he was 14 years old. And it was a tragic story of how he lost his father. But he wrote a song about that. There's one phrase, one hook line in that song that means so much to me. Before his dad left for the last time, he hugged Luke and told him that he loved him. And the hook line in the song is, always say I love you before you say goodbye. You never know if it's the last time. So, I may tell you a multitude of times tonight. Because who knows if I'll see all of you again? Who knows? The clock is ticking. Papa has a plan. He's taking you places. He's taking me places. I sincerely hope that He blesses me with the honor of meeting you again this side of my meadow and counting those angels. But if He does not, you'll hear me tell you many times tonight, I love you. I want you to know that I love you. It is my greatest honor to love you. It is the great joy of my heart to speak those words over you, because with those words come power and come authority and come great blessing. Now, we released something this morning that some of you have already grasped and some of you are struggling with. Some of you shared with me just before the service of, I want your level of love. I want your level of forgiveness. I can't even imagine forgiving such a thing as what you forgave in your father. And I've had several people share that with me after the service this morning and then earlier tonight. Listen, when you step out into that level of forgiveness, to choose of your own accord, to pick up your own treasure, and to begin to offer forgiveness to those who deserve it the least, start there. Everything else will be a walk in the park. If you can forgive those who absolutely deserve it the least, everything else will be in the walk in the park. But didn't Jesus pretty much explain that to us? He said even the heathen could love their own kind. No big deal. I mean, for all of us to hang out with people, for me to hang out with people that think Danny Wallace is all that in a bag of chips, and boy, that's a dumb crowd right there too, let me tell you. But for that crowd that thinks I'm wonderful and thinks I'm everything, and I love you, Danny, I love your story, I love your music, I love everything about you, for me to love them, big deal. Is that a big accomplishment? I mean, any blind fool could do that. Who's crazy enough not to love someone who loves you? But Jesus said if you want to walk in real power, how about you love your enemy, those who hate you, those who despise you, those who can offer you nothing? How about you discover what it means to step into the honor of loving them, truly loving them, and blessing them, and understanding that love doesn't come with a secret agenda. Love is an honor. It is a precious gift to give. It literally releases something supernatural in the spirit realm that mends broken hearts, that sets captives free. And guess who the first captive is that it sets free? The one who chooses to offer the gift. It sets the gift giver free, and it sets the one who receives the gift absolutely free. Papa just does something so supernatural that it is beyond our dreams or our imaginations. And when you release this kind of forgiveness, let me tell you something that's going to happen. The enemy is going to come in like a rush, and he is going to do everything he can to get you to take it back. My father passed away the week of Father's Day, 2008, on a Thursday. Let me give you a little history about my dad, too. I told you he was hardworking, he was humble. probably one of the hardest working men I've ever seen in my life. He was up before sunrise. He was the first person on the job. He was a master carpenter and builder, and he worked very hard. And my dad also had this macho idea that he would assess a situation and discover what was the absolute most difficult way to do it, and that's the way it had to be done. I mean, if something could be accomplished in 10 minutes, but you could go a difficult route and it take 2 weeks, Daddy had to take the 2 weeks so that you could see him suffer and work and sweat and labor, because in his mind, there was something about that made you a bigger man, made you more of a man. And he had never missed a day of work in his entire life. That's pretty amazing. My dad didn't take vacations. He had never spent a night away from the home where I was raised in Hazel Green, Alabama, where all the abuse took place. My dad had never spent a night away from that home. And he had never been to a doctor. Oh, Lord, he nearly cut his finger off one time on the table saw, and he poured kerosene on it and wrapped it up, and that thing was squirrely looking after it mended, I'm telling you. But he just had this macho idea that only sissies went to the doctor. Y'all have anybody like that in your life? I hear from the sniggers that you probably do. Tough old country boy that he don't know how to say I love you, but he knows how to work hard, and he knows how to stretch it out long and difficult. We all have somebody like that in our life. Well, that was my dad. And but just prior, in 2007, my dad began to have some chest pains and have some problems. By that time, he and my younger brother were working together. Years ago, when my brother and I worked for my dad was the kingpin, and we were the scrap boys that did all the mundane jobs that nobody wanted to do. The roles had reversed as my dad had gotten on in years, and my brother was really the lead of the business, and he pretty much just gave my dad things to do to help him feel important and make him still feel worthy, because whether he wanted to admit it or not, as he was in his late 70s, he was slowing down. You couldn't tell him that, but he was. And he began to have some chest pains, and so he did go to the doctor, and lo and behold, in late 07, right, he had major bypass surgery, I think a quadruple bypass surgery. Came through that like, a breeze. As a matter of fact, we drove from Atlanta to see him in the hospital there in Huntsville. I'll never forget going in the room, and he was back to telling the nurses, man, I quit school because they had recess. So I thought, oh, Lord, could you not get new material? And then he moved on to, these crazy doctors say that old Malk will never work again. They don't know what I'm made out of. They don't have any idea. And I thought, Lord, no, they do not have any idea what you're made out of. And so we endured that about as long as we could over that weekend. We came back home to Atlanta. My dad, right out of the hospital, he went right back to work. And he was hanging in there pretty good until right after the first of the year. My brother had given him a cell phone to keep up with him. And one morning, my dad wasn't at work, and he was always the first one on the job. This had been the history of his entire life. He was there before the sun came up. Now, what does a carpenter do before the sun comes up? Who knows? I have no idea if you can't see anything. But he was always there. It was part of his routine. And he wasn't there that morning. So by 9 o'clock, when he had not shown up, my brother was getting a little concerned, and he gave him a call on the cell phone. My dad answered, and he said, Randy said, are you all right? He said, yeah, I'm all right. He said, well, you're not here. Did you have a doctor's appointment and I forgot about it? He said, no, I didn't have a doctor's appointment. He said, I'm hanging it up. I won't be back. He said, I'm going to lay down and die. And Randy said, today? And he said, no, it's going to take me a couple of months. But I'm finished. I won't be back. See, my dad loved his reputation so very, very much. And he had discovered that old Malk was never going to be what old Malk used to be. And the only way he could handle that was just to go home And he chose of his own accord. There was nothing wrong that he could not have lived much, much longer. He survived his bypass and was doing well. And he chose to go home and refuse to eat. And it did take him a couple of months. And within that couple of month period, they're a little behind where I was raised in Alabama. Now, my life story had been out there since the late 90s, all over the internet and all around the world. But for some unknown reason, where I was raised, people weren't fooling around with the internet, I guess. Probably didn't even know how to turn the computer on. But somebody discovered my story, called my sister, told her about it. My sister confronts my dad with my story, and my dad's response was, "You know, Danny, he's always been crazy." But then I get a call 2 weeks before my dad passed away, and it was my brother. I'll never forget this. I was standing in our master bathroom at home, in the master bedroom bath there, and I got the call on my cell phone. It was my brother, and he talked around a little small talk for a few minutes, and then he said, "Danny, I'm just going to get right to it. I don't know any other way than just come out with it. Daddy's driving me crazy, and you know how he is. He's never going to confront anything face to face. He always likes to go around the end road with it. And so he's driving me crazy. He wants me to call you and tell you that when he dies, and it's going to be soon, he doesn't want you or any of your family at his funeral. He doesn't even want me to call and tell you when he dies, but I will do that." And I remember standing there in the master bath. Show of hands real quick. How many of you were here this morning? Okay, the bulk of the crowd. You remember me telling you in the middle of the barn, that old hissing voice that said, "You stupid little fool. You stupid little fool. You fell for a load of wood in the barn with all you've been through." For just a brief moment, I heard that voice again right there in my master bath that said, "You stupid fool. This is the man you've forgiven? This is the man that you have traveled all around the world, that your story has been downloaded over 2 million times. You've written a book, they're making a movie, a documentary, everybody's talking about the freedom that's come from your story, and your words of blessing, love, and forgiveness, and 2 steps before the grave, this old man reaches out to slap you one last time. You stupid fool." And when I say brief, it was less than a millisecond, because I understood the power of those words, "Get behind me, Satan. You have no authority here. I have not forgiven my father so that he would ever love me. I have forgiven him because it's the best that I have to offer." He's in charge of his funeral. It's his. He's in charge of deciding that he wants to lay down and die. That's his. It's under the full authority of all that's in him. But there's one thing he holds no authority over, and it's my treasures. He cannot take away my blessing for him. He cannot take away my love for him that comes with no agenda and no requirement that he love me back. And I refuse to ever go back to a place where anyone has the authority to take away the honor of my forgiveness, and especially over an old man who never deserved it. He never deserved it. It has set me free. It has set others free. And I will not take it back. I will not take it back. And my brother said, "You know, I don't know how you are, but if somebody didn't want me to come to their funeral, I wouldn't come." I said, "I will honor Daddy's wishes. It is his funeral, and I will do what he has asked. Even though dead is dead, and when you're dead, how's he going to know where I am?" And you know, the enemy also whispered in my ear, "You're not going to go to that funeral? Do you know how that's going to look? Do you know how that's going to look with who you are and what you do and what you speak about? And this man you've spoken about loving, blessing, and forgiving, and you don't even show up at his funeral? Do you know what that's going to look like?" I know what it would look like to a man who is still building, working, preaching, speaking, living, and breathing for himself. But let me tell you what it looks like to someone who took